Yes, Playbook Show 62525 with Jim Feist and Andy Isco from Las Vegas. And you can see Las Vegas there on your screen. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Andy, good morning.
Good morning. I did not even realize that background is in motion. I see the cars moving down. I guess that's the 15 in the foreground of that thing at Vegas. And people are probably wondering, since it's early on the 25th, why are we having a nightlight
I was just going to
scene
say,
there? But it looks nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, well,
Yeah.
the city shows up much better at night with all the
Yeah.
lights and everything. But yeah, we're doing it in the morning. The sun's up. That's a shot from not last night, but whenever.
Almost any night.
Any night.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we got. The NBA is over, but it's not over because there's lots of trades going on. We got the WNBA.
Oh, we got the draft coming up in the NBA.
And we have the drafts, and that could be big. And then we have baseball, of course. And then I'm starting to do a series now. I started yesterday on new coaches, new matchups. Like the first one I did was, and this is all available on Proline TV on YouTube, and I reposted on jimfeist.com as well. But Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, how is that going to click? Looking at the offensive and defensive coordinators that are either there from last year or come in. This is all part of building a overview of a team and what might happen, because we do know that the league, and I'm not trying to change this into a football show, but it's right around the corner, and it is the biggest sport we have in America. So looking at that, I'm trying to get into all of that, making some projections. I mean, so I'm doing them all in shorts, so which means they're all 3 minutes or less. So anyway, that, and then we've got the NBA, which is over, and I hope that Halliburton recovers quickly and can come back. He'll probably miss all of next year, as Tatum will for Boston. So you got two.
I'm guessing the hope is that they recover quickly enough that perhaps, and I don't know what the situation would be, is that they might be available for the playoffs.
That's actually very likely, but I don't know what kind of shape they'd be in. But yeah. You're right. It was unfortunate the way that turned out. Final game, you play all season long, and 7 minutes into the game, you go down. But there was a little bit of a warning on that a couple of games before. But then he played game 6, and it didn't seem like it'd be a problem. And then game 7, he comes out hot. They're playing good. It should have been, it should have been much more interesting game than it turned out to be. But it was still a good series. And then we got the WNBA. Now listen to this stat. Okay. Caitlin Clark, she missed 5 games or so, comes back, first 2 games, she was red hot. But now she's played 3 games since. In those 3 games, she's attempted 23 3-point shots. Do you know how many she's hit? I do, but I'm going to throw it out there.
Yeah, I don't, but I'm going to say the way that you phrased the question and the introduction, I'm going to say she may have hit 4.
You're too smart. You figured it out pretty good, but you're still overestimating. She's hit 1.
Oh wow.
1 out of 23 threes in the last 3 games. Well, here's what's happening, and just this is an information site. It's not really a pick show. We do give out picks, but the defenses for the other sides, they're beating her up. Of course, they've been doing that since she came into the league. But they're playing defense on her, focusing on her. But what it's doing is it's opening up the rest of the floor for the other players. And they have some really good players on this team, by the way. They brought in good players in the offseason. They brought in a new coach. And the school's still out whether it's all going to work or not. But, yeah, they won last night at Seattle. They opened the game. Indiana was 1.5. I think it ended up Seattle 3.5, or maybe even 4 are favored, but Indiana won the game. And it wasn't because Caitlin scored a lot of points, but she was kind of like not unintentionally a decoy, opening up the rest of the floor, and the rest of the kids, girls, did a hell of a job. And then we got the Lynx, big favorite.
Yeah.
And this is a question I'm going to have when I'm done with this little quick. They lose straight up was a Washington beat them, the Mystics. So shocking, because the Lynx are really good, and them and the Liberty, when both are healthy, are the two definitely
top teams.
But they're playing this. Okay, maybe you understand this better than I do. The Commissioner's Cup, and they're playing for $500,000, and it's going to be the Lynx against the Fever because they qualified.
Yeah,
and the $500,000 is a lot of money. I'm wondering if these teams are focused on that a little more than we're giving them credit for that, because these girls don't make as much money as NBA players do, and
not even close.
$500,000 is a lot of money.
Only Caitlin Clark and maybe one or two others are making what, and it's all relative, but those are probably the only, maybe half a dozen at most are making what you would call reasonable salaries.
Yeah, well, she got a good salary, but she's making all the endorsement money too. I think she picked up $19 million from, was it Nike? And she does a lot of other stuff too. And the rest of the girls are making more money too from endorsements because the league has become more popular. And of course, you also have the beauty factor. Some of these girls are very attractive, and they're picking up big contracts from endorsements. So it's all good that she's come into the league and raised the level of all of that income, and their travel conditions are better because they're
but $500,000 is still $500,000, and that's a great incentive to get your best efforts.
I don't know anybody that wouldn't get excited about making $500,000.
I'd certainly be pretty excited.
So anyway, that's some
quality of basketball you might see from me wouldn't be all that great, but I'd be excited.
Well, we'd make it. We'd look the other way. So the NBA's made some trades. Durant is moving on from Phoenix to Houston, which is, Andy, you have the odds. I think they're the second favorite in the West now, next to OKC. Boston, they know that they're not going to have Tatum, and he's an outside shooter, three-point shooter, good player, one of the leaders, and he will be missing next year because of the Achilles. For the most part, he'll probably miss the whole season, most likely. But they got rid of Drew Holiday, and they got rid of Porzingis. And they brought in a shooter. They need somebody to shoot the three-point shot because they are the team that shoots the most three-point shots in the league.
Well, that was going to be my question. Will this change the philosophy of the Celtics? Because we saw, especially in the playoffs, how all those three-point shots weren't falling. And as a result, the Celtics, the defending champions, didn't even make it to the conference finals.
As a matter of fact, the teams that shot the most threes did not get the
Cleveland.
The Cleveland was another one. Exactly. Now, Cleveland did suffer some injuries, and they had three starters out in one of those games. And so I don't know. I like the way OKC plays. I like the way Denver plays. It's a little bit of a combination of new basketball and old basketball. The teams that line up on the outside and shoot threes, it bothers me because it is the worst statistical shot in the game. You can shoot 12% or you can shoot 60%, but you don't know what night that's going to happen because it's such a hit and miss shot. So I wouldn't want to. Well,
that's why the saying has long been: you live by the three, you die by the three. Depends on how you're hitting them that night. And so the mid-range jumper is a thing of the past.
Well, not for everybody.
Yeah.
OKC,
in general.
The one guy, the best player in the league, or rated the best player in the regular season and in the playoffs, was
MVP.
SGA. Yep. And he doesn't focus on the three-point shot. He is a mid-range shooter, and he'll still get 30, 35 points in a game. And he's a great player, but he doesn't shoot that many threes. It's not part of his, overall scheme. He penetrates, gets to the foul line, rebound. That's old school basketball. When you look at Denver when I saw Denver playing OKC, I said, this Denver team could beat this club because they play that inside game also, even though they're the biggest guy on the floor is their point guard, which is crazy. Jokic.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing. He's a monster of a man, and he knows the game, but they had no bench. That was the problem with them. where Indiana had a bench, and that's why where OKC would beat a team up, they get up and then they put their bench in, and their bench was so damn good.
You
And the
wonder
other
how
team,
good OKC would be if they can bulk Holmgren up a little bit, add a bit of weight to him.
well, yeah, he's yes, that's a good point. I don't know if you can do that. He seems to be, DNA wise, that's the way he's built.
Yeah.
You make him more muscular, you could do that. But I mean, it's over 7 foot, right? Bigger than 7
Yeah, and he could be a nice physical presence with another 20 pounds.
Very true. Very true. That's a hell of a team, and they're going to go far. Interesting that the Lakers made a move. They sold the team.
Yeah.
And believe me, if you're going to spend that much money to buy a team, you're going to have your own philosophy in there. So there's going to be a difference there of what they're doing and where they're going. So I don't know if we're going to say this for the next 20 years, but is LeBron James going to ever quit? This guy, and then he is still extremely good at his age. It's amazing.
Would you say? I'm going to try to think of a number. Is he still? And again, forget his age for the moment. Just look at his still a top 20 player.
Oh, easily.
I mean, when you consider, let's say the average roster is, say, 12 players in the league, that's 360 players on 30 teams. For a guy to be where he is in his career, to still be a top 20 player, now look, players can lose it overnight, but assuming you lose things at a normal progression, which does increase with age, you're still a top 20 player. You got 3 or 4 good seasons ahead of you.
I have to answer that question in a couple parts. Almost no player plays all 80 games in the regular season. Correct. And as his age creeps in, and it gets us all, Father Time is undefeated. If he plays 40 or 50 games, in those 40 or 50 games, he's a top 20 player. The fact that he has to sit out 20 or 30 games, then this is going to probably increase over time because his age keeps going up. I would, this is the kind of question. In those games that he actually plays, yeah, you can't deny him. I mean, he plays at a high intensity. He does so many things. He's got a great basketball IQ. He can shoot. He can rebound. He runs the floor. I don't know how the hell he does it at that age, but he does it. And,
he's played 71 and 70 regular season games the past 2 years. He's averaged roughly 35 minutes per game in each of the last 2 years. He's actually been averaging over 30 minutes for years and years and years. But 70 out of 82 games, that's a lot. Of the average, 30 points last year and 28 points this year. That's probably a top 10 player.
You're right. In those now, would it be smart to say take an extra 10 games off? Yeah, I think so. But they need to have.
I think if you're thinking championship, absolutely.
Yeah.
But those games will add up. The games at the end of the season take a lot out of you because they're built upon the 60, 70 games that you've already played. Now, if he's only played 50 games, where normally he's playing 70, those extra 20 games come in playoff season. That's good. Remember, he's he's 40. He's going to turn 41 at the end of this year, and he's playing 35 minutes a game. That's 75% of a game.
That's too much.
Yeah.
I mean, based on today's standards, I mean, if this was back in the Larry Bird days, you don't take any time off. Those guys didn't ever want to leave the floor.
I don't know which is the more miraculous record, when Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points a game for a full season, or that he never fell out of a game, and I think he played virtually every minute of those games, including overtime.
He was an amazing athlete. I never met him. Like I've actually shook hands with Shaq and other players, but I never met Will to that point. But I did see him play.
Yeah,
massive human being, as strong as hell. And then
he played with the Globetrotters, I think, for a year or two. Then he played beach volleyball for a number of years, or the volleyball league, And then he went from leading the league in points to leading the league in assists at the end of his career.
Yeah, he had that.
I still think he's the most remarkable athlete
I
that we've seen across sports.
I totally agree. He's definitely one of those guys that maybe you're right. Maybe he was the most. He was a remarkable physical specimen. And strong as hell. He just did it all. Of course, he had a nightlife, I guess, that was pretty prolific, and
didn't seem to take too much out of him, though.
No, it did not. It did not. It was amazing. But anyway, LeBron.
Best picture in all of sports, if you can find it somewhere on the internet, I think it's Wilt Chamberlain standing next to Willie Shoemaker.
Oh, that's remarkable.
That's up there somewhere.
They need to build a roster around him, and LeBron. I'm talking about, and that maybe with the new ownership, they'll put a little bit more influence on doing that, because the roster has not been very good. But in order to compete in the West, I mean, you got Steph is getting old, the Warriors are getting old. But Houston and OKC are the top two teams in the West right now.
Houston actually had a very, very fine season this year that got overshadowed by what OKC was doing.
Yeah, because they won 68 games, which is remarkable. Now, moving on to baseball, which is the most dominant sport right now, is Skubal pitched yesterday. He was not a Skubal-like game, but you have to remember it was raining, and when there's rain and there's delays and stuff, pitchers don't always warm up the same way, and when they have delays, they have to sit more. There was a lot of stuff going on with you, so keep that in mind. Where you're looking at weather, we get a lot of bad weather in the United States, and they're talking about what's going on the East Coast. The temperature's 105, 102, 110, whatever. And that's what we get here in Vegas all the time. However, when they get 110 in New York or that region, Cincinnati, Cleveland, whatever, Pittsburgh, they're getting humidity with it. So when you're talking 105 with humidity, you're talking about a death sentence. You have to be really, really careful, because as a runner, I ran many, many years, 40 years of running. When you sweat from humidity, moisture is all over your skin, and your body can't cool down because your body is already wet. Mm-hmm. In a dry climate like this, that's not the case, because as soon as you perspire, because of the dryness, your skin dries up very quickly, so you can cool down. When you have heat and humidity together, and you're doing anything physical, especially even just walking, but it's very dangerous, and you can overheat. And if you're not hydrated properly, or if you have a medical condition, you can pass out and you can die really quickly. So you have to be very, very careful.
That's why they always say it's not the heat, it's the humidity. We're used to 116 degrees here. Now that's heat, but it's not an uncomfortable kind of heat that it's like when it's 95 in New York City and you're surrounded by Long Island Sound and the Atlantic Ocean and all that. You combine 95 degrees and all that 95% or 90% humidity. It's almost like it affects your breathing to a certain extent, because you almost feel like you're enveloped in this heat and humidity system. And you're right, your body cannot cool down, so it's very important to stay hydrated, and it does affect it. We were talking before we started the recording that when you're talking about baseball, the pitcher is out there filling that humidity for a good 15, 20 minutes at a time when he's pitching, as opposed to a batter. Yeah, they're filling it in the field, but you're really not doing all that much in the field unless the play is coming to you, a fly ball or a ground ball. And when you're sitting on the bench, you're not being affected by it. So that might be a reason why we do see some high scoring totals in these humidity games, because the batters are a lot fresher than the pitcher is, because the batters are going up to bat after having sat on the bench for at least several minutes while the pitcher's been out there pitching. What is an average pitcher? Maybe 12 to 16 pitches an inning.
And when the temperature is high, the ball flies more. It goes further. I mean, that's a scientific fact. I'm not going to try to explain that, but why it happens, but it is true.
Mm-hmm.
and Andy and I are talking about that, and we're saying, well, maybe we should be betting the second half of these games over because you're bringing in bullpens, and most of the bullpens suck, and
Yeah.
there are very few that are very good. So you might be looking at the second half of these games to be going over because you don't have the quality pitchers that started the game. And even those players will have a difficult time if you can keep the ballpark and the ball in the ballpark if the temperature is that high and the ball's flying more. So you might be better off looking for ground ball pitchers in that scenario where it's not affected. It's a complicated situation when you're dealing with temperatures and wind. I mean, the other day that you had Chicago with the wind blowing out so much, I think they had like 15 runs in like 3 innings. I mean,
I think we saw our first 12 and a half in one of those Seattle Cub games. Now
Yeah.
that number 12 and a half used to be routine in Colorado until all the adjustments were made. And now Colorado, maybe you see a 10 and a half or an 11 every now and then. And at Wrigley Field, of course, you can see, with the wind. And we saw what was one of the scores, 9-7, 17-6, 14-6, something like that. And that's part of the humidity as well. And you got the lake effect coming off of Lake Michigan as well. I try to avoid temperatures in games in those extreme temperatures for that very fact, unless you've got two really good pitchers going, and maybe they'll last for 5 innings and you can play that first. We've talked about, I think, before. I don't like playing under 3. If I've got a good matchup like we had, what was it? I think it was last night with Suarez of Philadelphia going up against Valdez of Houston, which ended up being a 1-0 game. I'll play under 3.5 in a matchup like that. Because 3, I can still win. But if you're playing under 3 in that matchup, that means you're limiting yourself. You can only win on 2 or less. And that becomes an important run. Normally, when I look to play unders, I like to play under 4. Occasionally, you'll get a 4.5, but that usually means one of the pitchers is not of what we call an elite status, an A or a B plus pitcher. I don't mind playing overs for the first 5 innings. But when I also play that, I might make more often than not, I will make a half unit play on the first 5 over and the other half of the unit play on the full game. The theory then being that if you're getting a high total that's worth playing over because you got 2 bad pitchers, those are probably the kind of pitchers who are not going to average lasting through 5 innings. So they're going to score more runs or going to allow more runs than normal. And then you're turning it over to the weaker pitchers who, for the most part, are pitching out of the bullpen because they're not good enough to go 4 or 5 innings, and they can go. They're scheduled to go maybe an inning or 2 at most before they turn it over to the next reliever. So I'll look to play unders 3.5 or less. Overs, I'm a little bit more lenient as far as what I will play over because I'm getting the weaker pitchers.
Talking about today, we got a pretty strong pitcher in Pittsburgh with Skeens. Very bad team. They're not a good team, but they're playing at Milwaukee, who is kind of marginal, but up and down right now. But they're doing okay.
And this young pitcher, what did he start with? 7? What was it? 7 consecutive hitless innings or something?
Pronounce his name.
Looks like Misiorowski, I think it is. Misiorowski.
Well, here's interesting. The game Pittsburgh opened 115, but now the other side's minus 110. And the total in this game is 6.5.
Yeah.
Or 7. There's some 7s. But see, that's a kind of a game where I'd be first 5 under. That's what I would do because I think.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look right now to see what the first 5 is. And unfortunately, it is the number 3. And that's a tough number to play under again because it takes 0, 1, or 2. And we know what Skeens can do. But Misiorowski's had 2 great starts, but those are his first 2 starts in the major leagues. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember exactly how many innings he went in the first start. I know in the second start, I think he went 6 innings, a perfect. I think he was pitching either a no-hitter or a perfect game through 6 innings or something like that.
Pittsburgh's not much of a hitting team, and they've never seen this kid before. I would be first 5 under, but I really would rather get 3.5. But I don't know if we can find it.
Yeah.
Then you go down the list here. Gallen at Burke, White Sox, Arizona. Gallen hasn't been Gallen this year. He's not, and he was always better at home anyway. And now he's on the road. I couldn't lay 155 with them. That's too
And
high.
that's been bet up.
I know. When open 140.
Yeah, because the White Sox are just so bad offensively.
I know.
So
Well,
the total is 8.5 over. That's a tough game for me because you've got a very weak hitting team in the White Sox going up against the better pitcher who's not in very good form. And Burke, Arizona's a little bit shorthanded with some of their offense right now, but they should be able to put the runs up. I can understand why the line went up because they're figuring 8.5 is a high total for a team that doesn't figure to do much hitting. With the White Sox, at the same time, you got to believe them that Arizona, if this game's going to go over, it's going to be because Arizona's going to be able to put up 5 or 6 runs.
Let's see. Boston, L.A., anything in that game that interests you, or Washington, San Diego?
Let me see what I have here because I'm starting to look at.
We don't have to talk about every game, but something that steps out interesting.
The Angels. Let's see. One of the things I follow, and it's been people are doing it for years, but I follow it 2 ways, and that's umpires. Do they have a tendency to umpire games that go over or under the total? But I also take a look to see how they do for the home and road teams. And I think in this Angel game tonight, the umpire is going to be Alan Porter. No, maybe that's not it. Maybe that's a different game that I'm looking at that I thought I had them listed as. Oh, I know what it was. It's the Kansas City game, Tampa and Kansas City. John Lipka is the home plate umpire. And in his game so far this year, there have been 3 overs, 9 unders, and 1 push. So I look at stuff like that, but I not only look at those numbers, I look at what the average number of runs scored in his games are, 7.0. Now this Tampa Kansas City game, the total is 9. So that game that I might look under, but I also might look under in the first 5 to take the bullpen out. Although I do have Kansas City and Tampa Bay both rated with very good bullpens. So when I look at that, and I've got 2 decent pitchers, Rasmussen has been pitching decently, Walker has been pitching decently. I'd probably say on a scale of A, B, C, D, those are probably B to B minus pitches, which is above average, but still not in elite class. So I might look under in that game tonight, especially because, Tampa Bay's been playing extremely well. Kansas City has cooled off a lot since April.
They have. That might be a first 5 under, first even full game under. Yeah. Either way, you could look at that.
Again, actually, he's now 10-3 to the under, 10-3-1 to the under.
Who's it? Who's that?
The home plate umpire in Kansas City, Lipka.
Okay. Yeah. Minnesota had that 13-game winning streak, but they've pulled off quite a bit in Seattle.
Considerably, yeah.
And Seattle has been a little bit tough to beat. That's Ryan against Kirby. Anything in that game?
Kirby started the season late. He was injured, and he struggled his first couple of starts. He seems to have started to settle down and find things a little bit better recently. Ryan has not been pitching at the level that he pitched back in April and May. He's put in a few clunker starts lately. I'm trying to go back and find out. Let me see when Kirby made his last start. It may have been in the series against the series against Chicago. That was a 9-4 game that they won. He pitched decently. No, well, I guess not really. Five innings, 4 runs, 7 hits. That's not a decent start. That's a below average start. But he had been pitching well before then. And Seattle does have a better offense than Minnesota has shown lately. So we're looking at the line in that game. And where am I showing? I'm showing Minnesota somewhere's about a -120. Now, I played Seattle the last 2 nights, and now Ryan, who has been their best pitcher, who's active right now, I'm a little bit reluctant to play Seattle to go for the actually it's a 4-game series because they do play tomorrow. So let me just go back and see what Monday was, because I think Monday was the close game that was the 11-2 game that Seattle won. So the line suggests Minnesota, despite the fact that Seattle's beat them the first 2 games. but I like Kirby. I think is still rounding into form, so I'll probably end up passing that game because I don't have anything really strong on either pitcher right now.
The Cubs, St. Louis, Boyd against
Fetty.
Yeah. The Cubs are open 125. They're up to 150, 145, 148. A lot of money on Boyd and Cubs today.
Where's the total in that one?
8.5
right now.
No,
I saw 9.
Or 9. There's a 9 too. Yeah.
I think we've talked about this one before. When I handicapped today's games, I did it last night. My initial, I'd say 2/3 of my work was done last night. And one of the games I had down for today was the Cub Cardinal game, first 5 under.
Okay.
They both pitchers, if I recall correctly, I don't have the number in front of me. One of the things I look at, I know we look at ERA, and I like to look at last 3 games, but I also like to look at the WHIP, walks and hits per innings pitched. And I think both of these guys are in their last 3 starts under 1 runner per inning, which is good. Which means, and we've talked about it before, it means you're not really giving up the 2-3 run homer if you're limiting base runners. And that's reflected by a low ERA. But sometimes you may have a guy like I think Fried is an example who has a good WHIP, but he's got a high ERA in his last few games because he's been giving up long balls.
Correct.
So he's been limiting his base runners, but he's limiting his base runners over the stretch of time that he's pitched. But often he's been putting on several base runners in one inning and then going several runnerless innings to make up for that number.
Runnerless or rudderless?
Some teams would be rudderless. In this case, I did mean runnerless.
Okay. Wheeler against Gordon. That's Philly against Houston. And you said you lost to Philly yesterday, and now they're a 160 road favorite, 175 in 2 spots. That's a big
Gordon.
number.
Yeah, Gordon has actually pitched well in his last few starts. In fact, I'm sorry. I looked at the under in this game, and again, from the umpire angle, because I did have Philly listed as a possible play at that price. It would either be on the run line or it would be as part of a parlay to mitigate the high cost of laying minus 160. The umpires that I have in that game is Marvin Hudson, a veteran umpire. The home team is 10-4 in his games this year. And the under is 12-2 in his games. And that's extraordinary. It'll probably average out, but he's only allowing 7.7 total runs per game. The problem with that is the total in this game is 7.5 or 7.
And 7.5 minus 120, 25.
Yeah.
The big money's on the under for sure.
Yeah. Which it was last night when the matchup was a little bit better with overall. I mean, it's hard to get better than Wheeler because he's been an elite pitcher the last several years. Ranger Suarez has been pitching tremendously. He started his season late due to injury for the Phillies. He's been pitching well. And Framber Valdez has been a solid pitcher for the last 2 or 3 years. And that was a 1-0 game. I feel bad that I lost it, but I don't feel bad that I made the play.
No,
I mean, Suarez pitched 7 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 run and was earned, 2 walks and 7 strikeouts. That's going to be a winning performance probably about 90% of the time.
At least. The last game that might be, these last 2 games are big favorites. Dodgers are 320, 335, and San Francisco 220, 225. The only thing, I mean, there's several ways you can bet a baseball game, but one thing you might do there is just take San Francisco and LA and a money line parlay, small money, put $50 on it or something.
Yeah. Well, the only thing with the Dodgers is 3-1. That's a big number. I've talked about it every time we talk about betting baseball, almost every time. If you play 2 teams that are minus 200, and I'll do the math for you because it's very simple. Okay. That means you're betting $100 and you're laying 2-1 and you're getting $50 back in profits. Now, a parlay, basically, the definition of a parlay is you bet a game and you take the proceeds and you bet it on a second game. Now, obviously, in the way that we do things, you make the bet at the same time. But the way that it works is the way you figure out the parlay odds. Okay, you bet $100 at 2-1, you win 50, so now you got 150, and you bet that at 2-1 on the other team, so you win 75, so your 150 plus your 75 is 225. You laid out 100, your profit is $125. So basically, you bet two huge favorites at 2-1, parlay together, pays the same as a plus 125 underdog.
That's not terrible.
No,
And
3-1 reduces that a little bit, but that's why I say that maybe if you like the Dodgers or if you like San Francisco tonight and you like Philadelphia with Wheeler, maybe you put Wheeler in there because the minus 160 would even mitigate the minus 300 that you'd be laying with the Lakers. The Dodgers. Payrolls are about the same, even though the baseball team has many more players. But nonetheless, the thing with the run line, you are laying a huge price. You're probably laying minus 140, minus 145, I think, somewhere's in that line.
we
Maybe
didn't talk about this game, but I think we should. The Yankees against the Reds. The Reds beat them last night in extra innings. They're about
by the way, the pitcher was C. Burns, but not Corbin Burns. I think it's not Chase or something like that.
He did pretty damn well too.
Right, and it was Burns without the S. It's like Burns. It's like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Burns. It was his major league debut. A highly touted rookie and a highly touted prospect. He pitched extremely well, and the Yankees have not been hitting lately.
The Yankees are not. They have a lot of talent. It's just they're not clicking. They're not clicking. And here you got a big price in this game too. They're 220 favorite on the road, 9.5, 9 total. Singer against Fried. Yeah, I mean we know Fried is really had good stuff, but
yeah,
I mean that's a big number. And if you're looking for parlays with big price teams, if you can stomach the Yankees, there's 3 favorites for you: the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Yankees.
Yeah, and you could even throw. I normally say you could throw Philadelphia in there, but Philadelphia is in the weakest position of the 3 because they're on the road, and they're shorthanded with some of their offense out. Bryce Harper, of course, and a couple of other guys. I mean, they only put 1 run on the board last night against a Houston team that plays well at home.
Well, the Yankees are in the same position. They're favored on the road as well.
Yeah, but they're Cincinnati. When I look at the 2 home teams and I compare Cincinnati and Houston, I think is the much better team. Cincinnati probably has as much talent, but they haven't performed as well, which is unusual considering their manager is so capable.
That covers your baseball card. There's a lot of good stuff there. Now there's also there's a lot of things to talk about. You got golf and all that, and tennis, and
you got the Las Vegas Aces laying a huge number against the worst team in the league, the Connecticut Sun.
Yeah, but they play hard, and they like they like to slap you in the face and knock you down on the floor and all kinds of garbage. But
that's a big number.
This NBA is a bit of a drama this year. A lot of crazy stuff. It's it's a drama. I'll just stick with that word. But we do have football coming up, Andy, in 2 months, less than 2 months, or maybe about 2 months.
Well, the preseason games start at the end of July.
Then you got college. You got the college football as well.
August 23rd.
There's a lot of magazines are coming out now. A lot of good stuff. Mark Lawrence has a great magazine. Playbook coming out. You got Athlon.
That's the best magazine if you're looking at it from a wagering perspective because it covers a lot of point spread information. Mark has his trends, his situational plays, and he highlights a play or two for each college and pro team at the start of the season as far as favorable historical situations are concerned. And of course, he's got point spread results. The mainstream magazines, the Lindy's, there's one college, one pro. Those are both out. Athlon, same thing. Those are mainstream media. They don't look at it from a betting perspective. Phil Steele has some betting information, but he's very, very detailed with rosters. And one of the things he does is he does provide depth, first and second team players for all the college teams. 2 new college teams this year at the FBS level: Missouri State and the Delaware Hens. Maybe it's still the Blue Hens, but nonetheless, those are 2 new teams that'll be on the board. Although even the FCS teams, and we talked about it previously, why not specialize and take a look at those FCS conferences? The limits are lower, but so is the attention that the lines makers put into those games because they're not as frequently bet as the other games, but the money doesn't know where it comes from. It could be betting, baseball, basketball, whatever. But yes, Marks Magazine is coming out probably usually around July 10th or so. And yes, we're getting ready for football, and I know you and I are both in the throes of being prepared for when the season starts, and also taking a look at some potential future plays, whether it be to win the college football championships. Season win totals in college and pro have become extremely popular over the last several years in the colleges. It's probably been about 3 decades in the pros. Of course, the one caveat there, and this goes with our thoughts on bankroll management, is you're tying up your bankroll for 4 months if you're playing a future. Now, it's one thing if you're playing a future and you're getting 40-1 odds on it, and it's a nice payoff. But if you're playing season win totals, you're roughly playing even money, minus 120, minus 140, something along those lines. So that can be turned over in your bankroll quite a bit with not playing the future. But people like to play futures, and there's some opportunities there, and that's basically what we're doing now as far as preparing. At least, Jim, that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I'm focused on the coaching of the head coaches. I'm talking pro football head coaches. Matching up with their quarterback, offensive line improvements, offensive and defensive coaches, changes. For example, like Detroit Lions, their offensive and defensive coaches are gone. They moved on. And one of those guys was Ben Johnson. He moved over to the Bears, he's now going to work with Caleb Williams. And I did a piece on that yesterday. They're all shorts, 3-minute or less. And looking at what they're doing there, what I feel is my perspective on their upcoming season. What I do like about that, and you go Proline TV on YouTube, you can watch that. I also republish it on jimfleiss.com. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm also going to be do a little bit of work on when the coach is still there, but they bring in a new quarterback, at that kind of thing. I mean,
how about coordinators? When they bring in new coordinators as well? When they bring in new coordinators as well as quarterbacks? Or
that's definitely, for example, with Chicago, with Ben Johnson, he is an offensive coordinator, came over from the Lions to the Bears. He's going to be doing, he may
a
not
lot of the offense
play, but he is an offensive genius, so he's not going to back off of that. But they really improved their offensive line. Now, Caleb was go watch the video. It's only 3 minutes long, but Caleb was sacked last year 68 times in 17 games. He did throw 20 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, which is pretty damn good ratio when you're getting sacked that many times, because that doesn't count all the times you're hurried and all the other stuff. And
that's where the 6 interceptions comes in. That's a low number, because instead of throwing the ball away, you're taking the sack. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. But yes, he has to work on that. If he can cut that down into, let's say, 40 sacks, which would be roughly 2.5 per game, he could put up some very nice numbers this year. And Chicago they're getting a lot of hype, but I think deservedly so, not just for Ben Johnson, although that's a key part of it, but the additions to the offensive line, some of the skilled players that they've added. They could be a very sneaky team to at least bet, and you can do these now. They've had them up offshore for a number of years, more recently in Las Vegas. Will or won't the team make the playoffs?
Well,
theirs might be a nice price.
That's a very difficult division with the Packers, the Lions. No, that caveat there is the Lions did lose their offensive and defensive coordinator. So I like their head coach. I like the way they play. I like Goff. There's a lot of good things about the Lions. However, we have J.J. McCarthy is going to be most likely the starting quarterback for Minnesota. Darnold during the regular season played very well there. They have a good roster. They got a good coach. But can J.J. McCarthy step up from a college player to a pro player? Last year he was hurt.
And having a year off.
Yes. So we don't know anything about him at this level. Yeah, we know he's talented. He wouldn't be there if he wasn't talented. So it's kind of silly to even question that.
Although Michigan, when he was there, he was a capable quarterback, but Jim Harbaugh, was run first.
Correct. And most likely that's what they're going to have to be in Minnesota. So the question there is, when you're looking at that division, are you looking for Chicago to be 3rd or 4th? And now, are you going to
Probably third, but also keep in mind, and we see it with a number of divisions, is especially with the addition of the 17th game, 6 games are within your division, 11 games are outside of your division. So you got 11 opportunities outside your division. I think a team like Chicago, at least 2-4, probably 3-3 in the division would be a good indicator of the progress that they're making, because it is a tough division. We don't know about Green Bay, although Jordan Love, he took a little step backwards last year, but not a big step backwards. We don't know about McCarthy, as you say, and we don't know about Goff without Ben Johnson there.
Very, very true. It's going to make a change. I mean, we saw that with Philly when they lost their offensive and defensive coordinator that one year. I mean, they came out and played well early. I think they're 10-1 and then fell apart. But boy, there's a lot of speculation, and of course, this is a league, the NFL, where you can go last to first. But so it's, and then you got probably the best quarterback in football, in my opinion, is probably Burrow. And he's got the weapons on offense. The question is, what the hell are they going to do on defense?
Now, is that best as far as passing or overall? Because you've also got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in their legs, in addition to their arms.
If I was going to have if everything else is equal, and we're going to go we're in the Super Bowl and I'm playing against those other 2 quarterbacks, I am a big fan of Burrow. I like the way he's handled the pressure at the highest levels. Now, the other 2 guys have not been there. Neither one of them have ever been to the Super Bowl. But
although if they faced the Bengals, they'd be going up against the Bengals defense. But then again, if the Bengals are in the Super Bowl, the defense couldn't have been as terrible as it was last year.
Well, like I said, if everything was equal, because when it comes down to defense, the Bengals have the biggest question mark on defense. They might be a bottom 5 in defense if they were like what they were last year.
And that was with Hendrickson.
Yes. So I don't know what the hell to think about their defense. I really can't really say that they're going to be able to step up.
And they're not in exactly an easy division either with the Ravens.
Oh, no.
Cleveland, I think, has made some strides, and Aaron Rodgers is going to give the Steelers a quarterback this year.
Cleveland's going to be a difficult team when you look at it, because with Stefanski, with the players they have, the questions at quarterback, they are going to be a defensive running team. And most likely Flacco will get the start. That's just a speculation. And he is very good at play action passing. That's one of his skill levels.
Yep.
And he still can play. And if they can run the ball and play good defense, especially in their home games when sometimes the weather coming off the lake is very difficult, they can be very dangerous. Am I saying they're going to win no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying from a point spread underdog covering situation, they can be very dangerous. And you might be looking at some low scoring games. If they're going to run the clock that much, you're going to have far less minutes for the other team to score. And if their defense is good, they're going to make some games competitive. Now, I'm not saying.
By the way, that you just mentioned something very important. We were talking about Detroit, those 2 running backs, Gibbs and Montgomery. Yeah, Ben Johnson was a great offensive coordinator, but it's a lot different when you've got 2 great running backs to complement Jared Goff at quarterback. That the Lions may not be down that much, and that's another team that you could take a look at, especially with an improving defense, that they might be Cleveland of the NFC.
Last year the Lions would have been my choice to be in the Super Bowl and perhaps win it. But they had 1 million defensive injuries at the end of the year, 1 million of them. And that really hurt them, because they could put points up, they could control the ball, they could do a lot of good things. I mean, they had a great offensive coordinator. Goff played very well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But those injuries just kept mounting and mounting. Every week they were losing somebody. So they did not finish the season with anywhere near the health they had during the year. And that took away from them. It's going to be very interesting. The speculations, I mean, all over the league. And this is in this country, football is king. King, queen, anything else you want to call it.
And that's football with 2 O's, not the U.
You're right. Andy, anything else you want to go before we sign off here?
No, I think that's about it. I may have, when we do our show next week, I may have an interesting football Super Bowl play that I will have made. I can share that next week.
Okay. And you know what? I'll have one too because I already bet it and I've already announced it. And I'll share it with you next week as well.
Fair enough. And
Thank you,
how weird would it be if we're both on the same team?
I think it would be amazing because we have not spoken about it.
That's true.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for joining in. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, send us your comments. We will try to answer them. I'm a little backward on that. I need to catch up. There's a couple I have to answer, and I'll do that today. Andy, I don't know if you're going to meet and greet thing we have today. If you're welcome to join. If you have,
I was hoping to, but unfortunately, I had some previous arrangements that I could not reschedule today for that.
Okay.
But
well, I'll let you know how it goes. There'll probably be. I'm going to guess there's going to be 30 to 50 people there.
Please pass along my regards to most of the folks there that I know.
We are. You know, we do the Dom DeMarco's show. We call it the Pizza Show for short. Dom DeMarco's restaurant on West Charleston here in Las Vegas. It's an Italian restaurant, great pizza, great food. All the food is incredible. Albert Scali is the owner. And we're having a little meet and greet today at noon. And we're going to be, because we're going to gear up in 2 months, we're going to start the show back up again for football season, the Jim Feist Sports Handicapping Show. And we bring in the best handicappers, pro bettors, not just handicappers, they're just people that actually bet huge money and make a living doing it. So it's a quality show. We're going to air it live right here on Proline TV. We're going to air it live on jimfeist.com. We're going to air it live on all the social sites. And it's going to be big. It's an hour every week on Monday, 12 o'clock. This year we did switch it to Monday. So that's going to be very, very interesting and a lot of great information, a lot of great content from people who actually bet big, big, big money and win. So betting is one thing. Winning is a whole different thing. Yeah. Just because you're a billionaire and you can bet billions of dollars on a game or millions of dollars on a game doesn't mean you're a winner. These guys are winners. They really are. I love listening to them because I learn every week. Anyway, everybody, thanks for joining.
By the way, I'll just throw in this one quote since you're talking about billionaires and all that. And there was this old saying when Ruly Carpenter was the owner of the Phillies like 40, 50 years ago, and the Phillies were not a very good team. The quote was something like, how did Ruly Carpenter become a millionaire? And the answer was he started with $2 million. Nothing against them, because I was actually went to college in Philadelphia at the time when they started to become a really good team. In fact, it was interesting because when I was at school in Philly, the Eagles were starting to become good when they hired Dick Vermeil, and they were in a Super Bowl a few years later. And the Phillies had started to become a good team when they had Greg Luzinski, Steve Carlton, and Mike Schmidt.
And who's the manager? Gene Mauch?
No, that was 64. Okay. Gene Mauch, was it Danny Ozark? Might have been a Danny Ozark at that time.
I'll never forget that year.
One of our viewers will recall.
They blew that pennant so bad.
I'll
never forget that, how they did that. It was awful. And my dad was, who's since passed away, he was a big Philly fan. He went crazy. They just lost every game. And it almost got like they were starting Steve Carlton every day because they couldn't figure out how to win. And they were panicked, and it was a mess.
By the way, the other day, I think it was like about the 50th anniversary of one of the best performances by a Philadelphia Philly pitcher ever. Rick Wise pitched a no-hitter and hit 2 home runs in a 4-0 Philly win. I think it was 50 years ago this past Monday or something like that. So they have had their moments.
He actually hit 2 home runs as a pitcher? No kidding. Yeah. That's wow. Awesome.
Back in the days when pitchers could hit, and the emphasis is on successfully hit.
Amen. Thanks, Andy. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone.